Okay, so YouTube should have started yet now. It looks like I can't stream it also on Facebook at the same time, so we just stick with YouTube.
Yeah, that's fine. We can always add it to Facebook afterwards.
Okay, I think this should work now, and I just make you the host again, because unfortunately I have to leave the meeting, but then everything should work.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.
No problem.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, then have a nice meeting.
Thank you very much. Have a
Bye.
good day.
Thanks.
All right, so I think we are right on schedule to begin. So good morning or good evening, wherever you're listening this from, and well, welcome to the first IFSA organized webinar on the International Day of Soils. I think it's awesome that we're doing this. I can see an increase of interest as a whole towards soils, as they deserve all the attention they're getting right now. And we are gonna go ahead and start with our three presentations. First of all, we have Rodrigo Ornella from Chaupea University in Mexico, which is gonna be actually replacing Mr. Gómez Diaz, which unfortunately will not be joining us today. But I believe we found an awesome replacement in Rodrigo, which is an awesome presentation for us. Afterwards, Mr. Çakır will be taking over, talking about his latest research. Mr. Çakır is a professor of soil science and ecology at Karatekin University in Turkey. And afterwards, we're gonna cross the ocean once again and pass it over to Véronique Rouleau, which is a PhD student at Laval University, talking about carbon stockage in forest soils. So there you go. Without further ado, I will pass it over to Mr. Ornella.
Hey, thanks, Gabriel. Well, I'm going to talk about the origins of the World Soil Day and a little bit of the state of the soils here in Mexico. Well, can everybody see the screen?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
perfect.
Okay, thanks. This is a presentation about the World Soil Day, the Internationally Forest Association of Students, IFSA, from Istanbul, Global University, and Chaupea. Next one, please. World Soil Day. The World Soil Day is held annually on the 5th of December with the purpose to focus attention on the importance of healthy soil and to advocate for the sustainable management of soil resources. It was first recommended back in 2002 by the International Union of Soil Sciences, but it was until 2014 that the first International Soil Day was celebrated by the United Nations. The date of the day was chosen because it corresponds with the official birthday of the late HM King Bhumidol Aduljadesh, King of Thailand, who was one of the main proponents of this initiative. Next one, please. This campaign is focused on connecting people to soils and increasing awareness of their importance, not only in an agriculture-producing way, but also in our lives. That's because soil pollution is a global problem that deteriorates our soils, poisons the food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, indicates that roughly 815 million people don't have any kind of food security, and approximately 2 billion do not have enough nutritious food. Next one, please. Next one, please. Thanks. Here are other important facts about the state of the soils around the globe and how our actions as individuals can impact it. 1/3 of our soils are already deteriorated as a result of bad agricultural activities, bad waste management, industrial activity, mining, etc. 1/3 of the plastic produced ends up in the soils. Single-use plastic is still a reality in our lives. Imagine, on average, half of our shopping consists only in packaging. That's a really big number. Household chemicals such as gardening, cleaning, and personal care products ends up in soils and as a result in our foods. That's the same. Well, that's the same for the bad waste management and chemicals used in agriculture. Even though half of our household waste is organic, the vast majority ends up in landfill. So we don't have a culture for making compost or any other kind of organic practices. And 1/5 of the raw materials used for producing new products are wasted, so we don't consume everything we produced. Next one, please. Well, now I'm going to start with the state of the soils in Mexico. Mexico has 25 of the 32 soils units that appear in the World Reference Base for Soil Resource, WRB. This edaphic richness can be explained by multiple combinations of factors that form the soil and are present in the nation's territory. Next one, please. Six groups of soils cover the 80.7% of the nation's area. The most important or the most present are leptosols with 27.4% of the territory, regosols 14.1%, feocems 11.7%, calcisols 10.2%, luvisols 9.2%, and vertisols 8.6%. The national soil diversity is determined by the remaining 19 groups distributed in a large number of microreliefs, climates, and different types of vegetation. Next one, please. Okay. Problems. Here in Mexico, it's well known that soil degradation is caused by a wide range of human activities. The most important are the changes in land use associated with mechanized agriculture, overgrazing, and urban and industrial development. All this brings a biological reduction in the soil's capacity to produce goods and services related to human welfare, such as agricultural productivity and maintenance of the water and air quality. Next, please. Here in Mexico, the situation is that about 77.4% of the deteriorated national surface is associated with agricultural and livestock activities, 38.7% each, and 16.4% with deforestation and vegetation removal. The rest of the deteriorated surface, 6.1%, is due to urbanization, overexploitation of vegetation, and industrial activities. Next one, please. But we can make some things for conserving this soil here in Mexico. The National Forestry Program, PRONAFOR, guided by the National Forestry Commission, CONAFOR, supports actions and integral projects of forest restoration in order to recover the capacity and natural potential of the forest soils. These actions are implemented in lands that present deterioration processes due to soil degradation, loss of forest vegetation, or areas disturbed by fires, forest disease or pests, and natural disasters. Alongside these type of programs, these government programs, farmers have developed innovative strategies to improve soil quality and address climate variability. Utilizing traditional management practices that provide elements for the development of adaptive strategies in response to climate change and soil deterioration. Some strategies are agroforestry systems, silvopastoral systems, intercalated crops. The most important crop here in Mexico is corn, with fruit trees, and holistic farming. And next one, please. Well, I would like to finish this very small presentation with the 2018 World Soil Day slogan, be the solution to soil pollution. I really like this phrase because this means that we, as a whole, as a society, can't prevent soil pollution by making small changes to our daily activities. We can't make the difference. It's up to ourselves to make it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. That was super interesting. As I can tell, you guys have a lot of diversity in terms of soil types, which is a nice contrast to Quebec, where I'm from. If you guys have any questions, now would be a good time. You can either let your question be known in the chat or open up your microphones and make it a bit more personal. All right. Well, I might have a question for you, Rodrigo, if you can maybe clarify what holistic farming is. I'm not super familiar with that vocabulary, so.
Okay. It's more like activities. Well, it's a system to prevent or to plant. Yes, to plant the activities of the farming, more or less of the. I don't know how to explain it. It's principally with livestock farming to plant the the dates of, I don't know, when to plant the crops for the livestock, where to plant it, things like that. Because, well, nowadays not a lot of farmers do it. They are like, oh, well, I'm just going to plant here some grass and my cows will eat it. But they don't have the background for that. They're only, I see a part of the field, I plant grass, and that's all. Holistic farming is more like, we can say it's prevention for that kind of problems, because, well, we all know that if you plant only grass in one area of the field, in the long run it will deteriorate. So that's what holistic farming is preventing. I don't know if that is okay. That response was okay.
No, totally. Totally. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So if there are no more questions, we are going to go to our next speaker. If any questions do pop up about Rodrigo's presentation, we're going to make him available at the end of the webinar.
Okay.
So there you go. We are now going to transition to Mr. Çakır, which is going to make a small presentation about soil diversity in pine forest in Turkey.
Hello everyone, I'm so proud to be here, and I want to present soil biodiversity in pine forest. As you know, the forest ecosystem is very unique ecosystem, especially the soil biodiversity. And the main source of the energy in the soil come from the litter fall. And litter fall is an indicator of the primary production in the forest ecosystem. After a litter fall, a crucial ecosystem process begins, and litter is in forest ecosystem. Litter is where death and birth begins in the forest ecosystem. Therefore, the litter is the most important layer that distinguish the forest ecosystem from the other ecosystems. And you show the figure in the right side, the litter layer. We divided in the roughly 3 different layers. 3 of them, the organic layers, litter, fragmentation or fermentation layer, and humus layer. OL is the newly fallen leaf and seed and branch consist of, and the fragmentation layer varies according to the fungal or faunal activity. They separated the fermentation or fragmentation. If the fauna activity is high, we call the fragmentation layer. If the fungi or bacterial activity is high, the fermentation layer. And the humus layer is the consists of black granular plant and animal remains. And all of these layers, is litter layer, is hotspot for the soil biodiversity. And this figure shows the soil animals, and the soil contain organs of various taxonomic levels. As you know, some of them is millipedes, mites, collembolans, spider, fungi, and bacteria. All of them constitute a soil biodiversity. And you want to ask, what is soil fauna? How can separate the other fauna? The organisms that spend a part or all of their lifespan in the soil are called a soil fauna. We separate the soil fauna with the body size, and it can be roughly divided 3 meso and macrofauna. I'm shortly explain this micro and meso and macro fauna. This is the microfauna. Soil microfauna comprise the soil animals with body width the smaller than 100 micrometer, and the most abundant groups are nematode, protozoa, rotifera, and the fungi, microflora. Soil microfauna and flora support several ecosystem functions. Their best known function is the promotion of nutrient cycle by feeding on various food sources and the release of nutrients via their excrement. The majority of microfauna feed on bacteria, fungi, and plant, especially. In doing so, they can regulate the population size and activity of soil microbes and can promote the competitive ability and dispersal of beneficial rhizosphere microbiota by selective grazing on pathogen soil microorganisms. And this handsome guy, this is my topics, soil microarthropods, is soil animals with body widths between 100 micrometer and 2 millimeter. These animals contribute the nutrient cycling by the time suppress the pest and disease by selective feeding on pathogen microorganisms. By the time serve as a food source for the other bigger organisms, such as small vertebrates and macroarthropods, and the other role in the distribute smaller soil biota throughout the soil and gain a soil biodiversity in the soil. The other one is the macroarthropods. This is the bigger one. We can see easily on rocks or the soil. Soil microarthropods have body widths bigger than the 2 millimeter. And the soil microarthropods contribute to diverse ecosystem functions such as decomposition and nutrient cycling. By the time the soil structure, water infiltration, and suppress the pest and disease, regulation of the other biota, especially microarthropods, by predation, and can have both negative and positive effect on plant growth and primary production. This is easily and speed information I want to give. And the animals, what is the role in ecosystem? This figure is a simplified schematic illustration of black pine and soil fauna interaction. Especially everyone asking in this forest ecology, working in the forest ecology, how forest ecosystem affects soil fauna, how tree species affect soil fauna. We call the top-down effect. Simply, trees affect the soil fauna via litter fall and the rhizosphere, the root area. If we ask how soil fauna affect tree or plant species, we call the bottom-up effect. The answer is simple, actually, with the soil food web. Soil food web is, I try to show very simplified, easily, because this food web, you know, very complicated. How to start the food web? The huge amount of energy enter the soil ecosystem by litter fall. After the litter fall, the decomposer community consume the plant litter and gain a important amount of the energy, the body. Meanwhile, the predator consume decomposer fauna.
Hello.
This is my boy. I'm sorry. Meanwhile, the predator consumes the decomposer fauna, and the final product is the plant nutrients, and these nutrients benefit from these nutrients, and soil fauna affect directly the plant species that give nutrients. If we talk about the soil fauna, this figure shows that the soil temperature, soil moisture, soil and litter moisture, and the below graph is show that the total density of microarthropods in soil. A huge amount of individual living in soil in per meter. 60,000 individual, and during a year, this abundance is density the fluctuation because of the the season is drought season, and winter season badly affect the soil animals, and some soil animals during this period decompose in sleeping mode. And the spring and season, spring and autumn season, the density is increase, and activity is effectively decompose the litter material. I compose the different city and the different country comprise the how change the total density of microarthropods. The total amount of soil microarthropods in black pine ecosystem in different region can be seen the upper figure. These regions are semi-arid, especially LD1 is the semi-arid region. Belgrade and Araç is the semi-humid and humid region. And Australia, the national park, very similar to LD1, semi-arid region, and the amount of similar. By the time, other figure, the below figure show that the amount of soil fauna varies according to the stand age. Different stand age affect the positive or negative the soil microfauna. Older stands are generally more stable, create a more stable ecosystems, and they support the microarthropods density. Therefore, the density of soil fauna increasing in older stands. This figure shows that the most abundant two groups, Collembola and Acari taxa, more abundant group in the soil. Upper graph is show that the two different Collembola family. Collembola taxa is we call the R-selected creatures. This means they quickly reproduce and die quickly, especially in the dry season or the non-stable ecosystem process. Bad affected the community structure and density. The below figure show that the Acari taxa or Ibadita and Mesostigmata, more abundant taxa in the Acari. Taxa is key selected. This different strategy. They produce slowly, but their community density relatively stable. Yes, they are affected the season, especially drought period and the rainy period, moist period, but relatively stable compared to Collembola taxa. I want to show something in the table. I know the table is a little bit complicated. Here I want to draw your attention to this. The percent signature in below the proportion of the microarthropods, the amount of Collembola and Acari constitute about 90% of the microarthropod community. In the community, bigger part of the community constitute of the Collembola and Acari and drive the ecosystem process in the soil ecosystem. And we talk about the diversity. Yes, diversity change in season in the year, like abundance. But the soil biodiversity affected by the life cycle of the soil fauna. This causes fluctuation in biodiversity throughout the year. Yeah. The effect of semi-arid and humid ecosystem on the soil diversity can be seen in figure Eldivan Mountain and Belgrade Forest. Eldivan Mountain is a semi-arid region and a little bit low compared to Belgrade Forest, like biodiversity. However, the diversity was, if we talk about the below graph, different stand age, how affected soil diversity. The diversity was higher in young stand compared to density. But total density, we know the smaller graph in the right bottom side. Total density was higher in the old stands. This is the difference because it is known that there is much diversity in early stage of succession in forest ecosystem. The succession explains this situation because young stands contain a lot of plant species, and this plant flower, like flowering plants, increase the litter quality, and we know litter quality affect the soil fauna diversity because the palatability is increased and support a more diverse soil fauna. Another important indicator is the soil biological quality. A few years ago, Christina Menta developed this QBS R index. This is R come from the arthropods. This is very actually easy comprise the soil biodiversity because you have to calculate the biodiversity, especially Shannon diversity index. You have to know the species level. But if you want to use the soil biological quality index, you want only the order level. You say the Collembola or Acari, very easy, the identification, the higher level. And the soil biological quality show that this high, humid, and stable ecosystems. The Shannon diversity index is support the young stands, but the soil biological quality support the higher, older stands. The soil biological quality index calculate them. This is important. Some soil taxa adapt the soil environment, and these animals easily affect the erosion and soil pollution, and the quickly die. This badly affect on soil, and this effect easily show that this index to us, and we easily calculate the soil biological quality if we know and identify these taxa. And the main conclusion, the effect of microarticles on ecosystem processes. Soil fauna has important role in ecosystem process, such as decomposition of organic matter, humus formation, and nutrient cycle. They affect the pore structure of soil, aeration and permeability, and the distribution of organic matter in the soil horizons. As a result of feeding activities, bacterial and fungal population are regulated. Thus, both the population of pathogens are kept under control and soil biodiversity is preserved. As a result, knowing the soil fauna and their role in ecosystem process will also provide important information about the nutrient cycle and net primary production in forest ecosystems. The soil and litter layer in forest ecosystem is one of the hotspots of biological diversity. Knowing the soil fauna will make significant contribution to the soil biodiversity. And finally, by using soil fauna, soil biological quality can also be determined. Important information about both the biological and degradation condition of the soil can be determined at the minimal cost. Thank you for participating. This speedy and short presentation. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Mr. Çakır. That was super interesting. I might go ahead with a question for myself, since we're talking about International Soil Day, and it's there's a particular focus on climate change. Do you think there's any effect to be expected between climate change and the biodiversity in those kinds of soils?
Yeah, actually, the answer is both yes or no. Because of if we thinking about the globally, like a semi-arid region affected badly. We lose a lot of species in soil. But by the way, you know, the northern hemisphere, north part of the northern hemisphere, a lot of huge amount of area, the permafrost, frozen soil, and they slowly activate the soil fauna in this area. Shortly, the global warming effect support the northern area, and scientists thinking the new species evolved this area. Yeah, the answer is yes and no. Yes, semi-arid and arid region more badly affect, and I said a lot of species gone, but by the time a lot of new species evolved the northern area. But generally, yes, badly affect the soil biodiversity.
Right. I see. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you seem to have some support from the chat as well.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to either use the chat or open up your microphones.
I had a question. I was wondering if there was any studies you were aware of where they study how the organisms in the soil was affected in like degraded soils, or like how it could be used in restoring. Is that, I'm not sure that's how you say it, but restore like mining or agricultural soil that was affected. I don't know if it's if you understand my question.
Yeah, no, I don't understand because my network connection little bit. Your voice is losing. I'm sorry.
I will write it down.
Please ask again.
She will write the question in the chat.
Yeah, actually, a lot of paper related to degraded soil, the soil organisms, especially microarthropods. But the restoration is a little bit intricated because of these soil animals want a very unique systems because of the soil pH, soil moisture, and the organic material is very important for these soil animals. Restoration is a little bit hard, but how can I explain? The scientists working on these processes, but now we try to understand how change soil biodiversity affected this degradation or pollution. We try to understand the animal ecology and how affected this process on soil fauna. First, we understand the soil fauna. After then, we try to restoration we use these animals in restoration processes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I believe those were all the questions for now. So thanks again for the presentation, and I wish you the best of luck in your next research project. That's definitely a fascinating topic.
Thank you very much.
So we can now move on to our very own Véronique Rouleau from Laval University, which is going to present to us her PhD research on forest ecology as well in Quebec.
Great, so I'll start sharing my screen. Do you see it well?
Yep, this is perfect.
Do you hear me well as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So hi everyone, I'm really glad to be here today to talk to you about the subject of my PhD thesis, forest stored carbon. I would first like to thank Laval University IFSA local committee for the invitation. This occasion is really a great opportunity for knowledge exchange, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. So I'll start with a brief background of my experience in forest sciences. I graduated from the bachelor's degree in forest management and environment from Laval University in 2018. Then I started a master's degree in forest sciences in 2019. And since this summer, I'm a PhD student in forest sciences as well. I also did a research internship at the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology in Lancaster in the United Kingdom in the fall of 2019. So now you know, now you know a bit more about me. Let's talk about carbon. I'll first talk about the carbon cycle in the forest sector, then we'll see how to put carbon in the ground, and finally, that not all soil carbon is the same. I would like to clarify that the elements I will cover in this presentation apply to temperate and boreal forests, as there might be some differences with other biomes. So let's start with carbon. Carbon is a chemical element that is very abundant naturally in the environment. Carbon is a building block of life on Earth. Everything that is alive on this planet is made of carbon. For example, humans contain about 16% carbon, woods 50%, and organic matter in soils about 60%. But there are different forms of carbon: organic, inorganic, and organometallic. More precisely, we will be talking about organic carbon, which is carbon made by a living organism. And biomass is simply the mass of living things. At the global scale, there are 5 main carbon pools, or carbon reservoirs: the atmosphere, the oceans, the biosphere, the soils, and the fossil pool. As we know today, climate change is mainly due to too much anthropogenic carbon in our atmosphere. Over the past centuries, human activities have extracted carbon from the fossil pool in order to burn it and produce energy, and thus place this carbon in the atmosphere. Also, the way we manage our land, especially with industrial agriculture, moves even more carbon into the atmosphere. But carbon has a closed cycle. It means that if we reduce the amount of carbon in one of these pools, this amount is going into another one. The problem and the solution to climate change is simply a question of balancing these terrestrial carbon pools. So to effectively fight climate change, we need to develop strategies that both reduce carbon dioxide emissions and increase or maintain carbon storage in natural terrestrial sinks. And the forestry sector offers enormous potential for this purpose. The good news is that foresters have a toolbox to help them fight climate change. One of these tools is to use wood products to substitute other materials that produce more greenhouse gases and thus reduce emissions. For example, by burning logging residue to produce energy instead of fossil fuels, or to use wood products in construction instead of more greenhouse gas emitting materials such as steel or concrete. Another type of tool is to trap carbon from the atmosphere in natural terrestrial sinks, such as in wood products, which will store carbon in its mass throughout its lifetime, in the vegetation of forests, or in forest soils, which can store very large amounts of carbon for very long periods of time. But to fight climate change as much as possible, foresters must be able to use all the tools in their toolbox without them harming each other. For example, care must be taken to ensure that harvesting logging residues for energy production does not adversely affect the ability of soils to store carbon. So the forms of carbon are not our enemies. On the contrary, it's just that when there are too many of them in the atmosphere, they damage the planet's climate. But where they're trapped in forest soils, they improve soil quality and fertility. So a solution to mitigate climate change is therefore right under our feet. It is the soil. But to understand how we can maintain or improve carbon stocks in forest soils, we must first understand how carbon enters in the soil. And it all starts with photosynthesis. All organic carbon in soils is derived from photosynthesis in plants. Now, if you remember photosynthesis, it is a process by which plants take carbon dioxide molecules from the atmosphere, break them down, and turn them into different products. And one of those products are carbohydrates, or sugars. And these sugars are a form of carbon. So plants use these sugars to build their own biomass, namely their stem, leaves, roots, but they produce more sugars than they need. And these excess sugars will therefore be transported to the roots through the stem of the plant. There, these excess sugars will be released into the soil in 3 different ways: by dead root biomass, by rhizodeposition, which means the release of organic substances into the immediate environment of the roots, or by nourishing the microorganisms associated with the roots of plants. In temperate and boreal forests, the main microorganisms found in forest soils are bacteria and fungi. As pointed out by Professor Çakır earlier, soil microorganisms are vital for healthy soils because the breakdown of organic matter is primarily done by soil microorganisms. Microorganisms eat organic materials such as leaves, wood, dead organisms, and turn them into nutrient forms that plants can directly use, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and release carbon dioxide during the process. In other words, microorganisms transform complex forms of organic matter into simple forms directly assimilable by plants. So in summary, plants produce carbon for themselves and for soil microorganisms, but they don't need all of that carbon either. So they will break this carbon structure and build new ones that will be deposited into the ground. Soil carbon is considered to be a continuum of organic matter that is continuously processed by soil microorganisms. And the contribution of microorganisms to soil carbon is enormous. It is believed that a healthy soil contains 6 to 7 billion living organisms in a teaspoon, and every one of those is carbon-based and needs carbon. Microorganisms contribute to soil carbon as a carbon source through their biomass, their dead biomass, which we call the necromass, and the microbial products they generate, such as enzymes and metabolites. But they are also responsible for the processing of the forms of carbon in soils. So the main sources of carbon in soils are organic material in the form of above ground litter, plant roots, root exudates or residue deposition, and soil organisms. And several studies estimate that in temperate and boreal forests, the majority of carbon stored in soils come from plant roots and soil microorganisms. So now we know how to put carbon in the soil. The amount of carbon in soil is what we call carbon stocks. Carbon stocks in soils depend on the balance between the rates of carbon addition and the rates of carbon losses. It is therefore the very complex result of several input pathways, complex processes and speeds involved in the decomposition and stabilization of soil organic matter. So when we do not observe large changes in the amount of carbon in soils, it is in many cases because the rates of carbon gain and carbon losses balance out. So I just want you to keep in mind that it is a very dynamic process that occurs at different scales. First, there are temporal variations. Soil are dynamics, even without disturbance or management. And secondly, there are spatial variations. So significant differences can occur over only a few meters of distance. Because of this, the story of carbon is primarily a local story, and it is difficult to generalize to the scale of all forest soils. So this highlights the importance of having local knowledge in order to improve forestry practices related to soil carbon storage. Additionally, it is important to know that it's easier to lose carbon than to gain it. Therefore, managing soil carbon will often involve limiting vulnerability to soil loss. However, current efforts to promote soil carbon storage miss a key point. Not all soil carbon is the same. So particulate organic matter is what you can generally see. It contains partially decomposed organic fragments, such as tiny bits of leaves or roots. On the other hand, mineral-associated organic matter consists mostly of microscopic coatings on soil particles. It derives mostly from the bodies and byproducts of microorganisms and certain plant compounds. So it consists of a very strong chemical bond between a mineral soil particle and organic matter, and a lot of energy is required to break them apart. In other words, it is how organic matter protects itself from being eaten by soil microorganisms. So one key difference between the two is that mineral-associated organic matter is stuck to soil particles, so it tends to stay there for a long time. Particulate organic matter, on the other hand, is freely available to soil microorganisms, so it gets eaten much faster. These two types of soil carbon can be thought as your checking and your savings account. Particulate organic matter is like your checking account. It receives money every payday, but it gets spent very quickly to cover everyday expenses. Mineral-associated organic matter is like your savings account. It usually receives less money from each paycheck, but that money isn't spent as quickly. So if we want carbon storage in soils to be effective in fighting climate change, we need this carbon to remain in the soil for a very long period of time. And in order to do so, we need to understand how we can replenish the forest source savings account with our forestry practices. And this is exactly what I'm doing with my PhD thesis. So this diagram shows the amount of carbon stored in vegetation, illustrated by the size of trees, and carbon stocks stored in the soil according to different forest types. As you can see, different forest types store different amounts of carbon, and much of this variation is related to the climate found in a particular part of the world. But we can also observe that for temperate and boreal forest ecosystem, the majority of carbon stored in forests is found in soils, where 50 to 75% of the ecosystem's carbon is found. This illustrates the importance of properly managing soil carbon stocks in these types of forests. So this image is a picture I took at Laval University's Teaching and Research Forest, the Montmorency Forest, as it is where the majority of my doctoral thesis takes place. I also want you to know that it's the largest university teaching and research forest in the world, and a very beautiful and large playground for students and researchers. Otherwise, here's the take-home message I would like you to remember. Sorry. First, forestry practices help mitigate climate change. However, it is important to ensure that they don't affect the ability of soils to store carbon in the long term. We have to make sure that forest management currently practiced in forests contributes to climate change mitigation and provides a sustainable basis to the forest-based economy. Secondly, the story of soil carbon is primarily a local story. This highlights the importance of having local knowledge and experience in order to improve forestry practices related to soil carbon storage. And finally, soil microorganisms play a key role in the accumulation and persistence of carbon in forest soil. So future research on carbon soil will need to take into account microorganisms in order to better understand the carbon cycle in forest soils. So in short, it's all about scale. To understand the entire carbon cycle in forest and the impact of forest management on this cycle, it's necessary to take into account different spatial and temporal scales. From the microscopic scale, where everything goes very quickly at the scale of a few seconds, to the scale of the soil, where some characteristics change slowly, like mineralogy, while others change more quickly, like carbon pools, to the scale of forest landscape, where the cycles are much longer and take place over a decennial to centenary time period. I will end with this photo of a puzzle, a type of soil very common in the boreal forest, and which has characteristics that allow it to store very large amounts of carbon. And this is another photo I took at the Montmorency Forest just last month. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm available to answer your questions, if any of them.
Thank you very much, Véronique. That was another awesome presentation. And happy birthday, by the way. I think you've gotten a lot of attention in the chat, so that's
thanks.
It's pretty cool to see.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Hi, Veronica. It was a very interesting and exciting presentation. Thank you. And happy birthday.
Thank you.
My question is about you generalize as microorganisms, but is there any specific, can we specifically say for forest ecosystems, fungi are like much more, not important, maybe the correct word, but do you think the fungi play a greater role than bacteria?
Yeah, well, because fungi are bigger than bacteria, so they have more biomass. So because they have more biomass, they produce more carbon in their own mass. So and they produce a lot of byproducts, so a lot of enzymes, a lot of metabolites. So they produce a lot more carbon than bacteria. But bacteria are also very important and play perhaps different role in the carbon cycle, and they really need each other, if I can say so. There are a lot of interaction between the two of them. So I don't think one is more important than the other, because both of them plays together, if I can say so. But of course, fungi are bigger, produce more amounts of carbon, but perhaps they wouldn't produce as much carbon if they didn't have their bacteria friends. So I would say they both are really important.
Okay, thank you. And one more question, actually. In your PhD, are you going to focus on microorganism biodiversity, or have to say, or their capability of storing, or it will be in general just the management of, or are you going to deal with the above ground part, or just below?
Yeah, well, for my thesis, my first chapter mainly focused on soil carbon. So really carbon stability, carbon stocks, and the impact of forest management on these carbon pools. But my second chapter is only about soil microorganisms. So I will first do metabarcoding analysis that will allow me to see to identify who's there, so which bacteria and fungi are there, and try to link their identity to carbon functions and carbon stocks, and more precisely carbon associated with minerals, to see how, like I said, how microorganisms contribute to filling the savings account of forest soils, and do forestry practices affect these microorganisms. And the other part of my second chapter is more about their function. So it's going to be a combination of shotgun metagenomics and metatranscriptomics, which really go and see like, who's there, but also what they're doing, and try to link these functions with soil carbon, as I said before.
It sounds heavy. Yeah. I get without the molecular backgrounds, but yeah, I guess that you will do these metabarcoding things, but the other parts.
Yeah, so I hope to bring new knowledge, because it hasn't been done yet with functions, at least. So I really hope we can bring new knowledge and perhaps open new areas of research with that kind of
sure. For sure, that's a new age, these metabarcoding things. So good luck with your works, and thank you for all the others for organizing this.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, on slide 14.
Oh.
The relative proportion of carbon and nitrogen.
Yeah.
The particulate organic carbon and the mineral associated carbon were different. Like I could see more carbon in the mineral associated, more carbon in the particulate organic carbon than the mineral associated carbon. What could explain this this disparity, quote and unquote?
Well, it's a good question. I'm not sure I quite have the whole story to answer your question, but I'm gonna try. So the organic material that is going to association with minerals is not the same kind of material that is going to in particulate organic matter. So when it goes to association with minerals, it's usually possible that it's dissolved in the soil solution. So it's generally more microorganisms, byproducts, root exudates. So it's more liquid stuff, if I can say so. And these stuff are really more, they have more carbon and more nitrogen than, for example, pieces of roots or pieces of leaves. So they do have carbon, but they have less nitrogen than really concentrated organic matters such as roots exudate and microbial byproducts. So I think this is where the difference lies, but perhaps I don't have the whole answer with this, but I hope it's a good answer.
Okay, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions? I don't see anyone in the chat. All right. Well, thanks again, Véronique, for making a complicated subject more understandable. It's a tough task for sure. So with that being said, I think we could close the webinar. Feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'd like to thank our speakers from all over the world for participating, especially under such short notice. I know it was a bit last minute, but you guys have made this event super interesting. So I'm super grateful for your help. Otherwise, thank you guys for participating and for your super interesting questions. And we'll see you guys next year. I'm pretty sure since this has been a successful event, we're gonna want to repeat it in the future. And of course, thanks for the organizing universities that have participated in this project.
Yeah, I would also like to thank the speakers on behalf of my local committee at Istanbul. It was really interesting to hear about your opinions on diversity and climate change. And also, I would like to thank both our local committees from Canada and Mexico on helping organizing it. I think it was amazing to work with you guys. Yeah, and see you on the next events.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Happy birthday, Véronique.
Happy birthday.
Thank you for the nice webinar. Happy birthday.
Thanks for participating. Have a good one.
Bye. Okay.
Thank you for all, guys.
See you. Bye, guys.